The Finance and Property Committee. The committee's meeting this afternoon in the council chambers at City Hall on Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021 at 4:30 p.m. With that, I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll go to item number 2. Consider for approval a renewal application from Eco ATM Hunter Borkman for a secondhand article dealer license for the premise located at 4331 8th Street South. She's gone. Jennifer's gone.
If it's a renewal, so I don't have a problem making a motion to approve it.
Motion and second to approve the renewal application. Committee, all in favor, respond by aye. Opposed, ayes have it. Item 3, the 2022 Waterworks and Lighting Commission Budget Review. Jeff, I guess it's your floor here.
Yeah, all right, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for giving us the opportunity today to present our budget to you. Hopefully everybody has a copy of the budget. The budget that you have was reviewed and approved by the Water and Light Commission on October 18th after a pretty lengthy discussion. We did revise kind of our look and feel of the budget this year. It's the same information. It might be a little different than what you're looking to see from the city's budget. Under FERC requirements, the utility has to use an activity-based accrual accounting system, so just a little bit different, but hopefully you're able to follow the information in there. What I wanted to do tonight is just kind of give a little bit of overview, some highlights of the budget, and then answer any questions the committee might have. So looking first at page 2 of the budget, you can see our capital purchases went up quite substantially to just nearly about $6.7 million in total. If you dig in a little bit further on page 6, you'll see the biggest project we have in 2022 is our raw water line relining project. It's about over a third of the total capital budget for the utility at about $2.3 million. And this is a project the utility's definitely been looking at for several years. The pipe coming into, this is the pipes going from the wells into the plant itself, so it's a really critical infrastructure for the utility. It was put back in 1948, and American Waterworks Association estimates that pipe has about a 70-year useful life, so we're at the end of that useful life. Right now, there's about 18,000 feet of this pipe in service right now. And we looked at this project, like I said, we've been talking about it for several years. We looked at doing it in 1 year versus a multi-year phase approach. When we talked to the consultants and the contractors, we had about a $250,000 savings by doing it in 1 year versus paying multiple years for mobilization fees and whatnot. So decided, back in 2018, 2019, when we made the decision, we were going to do this in 1 year just to save our ratepayers that additional money. So above and beyond that project, the capital projects are pretty much consistent with previous year levels if you take that project out. The next 10 pages of our budget document kind of walk through the details of our capital projects that we have. I don't know if anybody had any questions on any of those capital projects themselves.
Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar, but can you just talk to aligning the project with the city and the discussions that have happened with that to make sure we're acting at the same time? I know we've had troubles with that in the past as far as tearing up roads, different things like that.
Yep, definitely. And the water main projects that are in our budget were the ones that the cities has in their budget too, so we're on sync with that and a couple other touch points we have between our budget and the city's budget. Everything's kind of the same on those two. Okay. As you all know, our rates are set by the Public Service Commission. We're very highly regulated by the Public Service Commission. So when we're talking about the rates that they set, when we go in for a rate case, they'll take a look at our expenses for a test year, make sure the revenues and the rate design that's in place will cover our expenses and then provide a reasonable rate of return on our net assets. And as a municipal utility, that rate of return is then reinvested in asset replacements and additions, gives you the opportunity to replace assets without having to bond and borrow for those projects themselves. So page 13 gives us that calculation for the electric utility. And you can see we're estimating about a 3.28% rate of return. The biggest driver on why that number is going down is power supplies are estimated to go up between 4 and 6% next year, based on the fuel increases that will be going on over the next year. And as you go through our budget, you'll see the power supply costs make up about 71% of the total O&M budget, so definitely a big chunk of that budget itself. Even with that, we don't have any plans to do an electric rate increase in 2022. The last time we had one, we filed it November 19 and implemented it in September of 2020, so there's no plans in 2022 to have to do an electric rate increase. The next couple pages walk through the electric details. Page 18, I wanted to point out, is the same calculation for the water utility. Unfortunately, the water utility, when you look at that rate of return, it's about a 2% rate of return on net assets versus the 5.6% that the PSC authorized when they created our rates. The main reason for that is when we went in for a rate case in August of 2018, the Verso usage was included in the rate design, and that to recapture those costs. That has substantially decreased. During that time, it was about 8% of the utility's total water revenue. So what we're proposing in this budget is to do a simplified rate increase. The Public Service Commission for Water Utilities has a tool where you can go in within a 5-year window of last time you did a conventional rate case. You can go in, request a simplified rate case. As long as your rate of return is decreasing, you can get a 3% increase on your rates. You can do that once every 12 months within that 5-year window. So the budget that we had planned has a 3% rate increase built into it. It's just over $1 per customer per month on an average residential customer is what that increase would be. But again, we'll be able to kick that full rate case down the road a little bit further and not have to have those larger increases that way.
Can you speak to, for both electric and water, the rate of return and why that's important?
Sure, yeah, the rate of return, the whole idea of the rate of return is that you've got a built-in net income to be able to replace assets as those assets wear out, need to be replaced, and you have funds there to cover that, or if you have large projects that you might need to bond for, that you've got money to cover that debt service payment that way. So that rate of return is pretty important to stay healthy so you can continue to invest in your infrastructure and not have issues down the road. The other thing I just wanted to talk about was staffing at the utility. For 2022, we have net zero position changes at the utility. We have 44 employees over at the utility. We have 1 addition and 1 removal in our budget right now. We're going to transfer one of our customer service representatives whose job duties include doing the private well inspection permitting. That was sent over to Water and Light back in 2019. He needs to be able to spend more time on that to get caught up, to be able so we can stay current with that program, as well as doing residential cross-connection inspections. So by allowing him to do that, we would backfill a customer service representative position to assist with collections and do some back office duties that way. On the flip side, we had a common laborer position over at the utility who resigned in October, and we decided not to refill that position, and those duties were absorbed by the water department right now. So overall, there's 1 addition, 1 removal, but a same head count over at the utility that's there right now. As you go through the details of the budget itself, The tax roll ordinance that did go into effect last year did help the utility. You don't see the balance sheets in this report itself, but I can tell you that as of the end of October, past due receivables are down 70% from where they were at this time last year. So thank you for that support. And I guess I'll take, Jem and I are here for any questions you might have on the budget.
I have a couple of questions. They're going to be simple questions, like softball. You can just knock these right out of the park. My first question is, what are your thoughts as far as working with the city for burying utility lines as the city is tearing up roads and doing that?
We have a number of spots in the budget you can see where we've got planned underground to convert from overhead to underground. Our primary goal on those is where it's really hard to get into or where there's poles that are, again, past their useful life, might have been rejected when we've done pole testing and need to be replaced. I think in the areas where
I'm sorry, could you talk into the mic? Because it's a public meeting, then everybody can hear.
Okay, as I mentioned, we're doing Metcalf subdivision this year, which is a large project for us going all underground. And we're continually budgeting $300,000 to $600,000 a year to plow stuff underground. Problem we're running into this year is we had to kick some projects down the road because we can't get underground transformers. And the price of them has skyrocketed. So as things start to level out from a pricing perspective, we'll start to do more of those in the future. And as Jeff was indicating, we typically go to areas that are hard to get to, where our lines are covered in trees, and we start where we have the most outages on overhead lines, and we hit those subdivisions first and then work our way back. So yes, we are budgeting about $500,000 a year to plow stuff underground.
So you guys are for as much as you can to convert everything underground.
Correct, but it would be conceivably impossible for us to do it all at once, and the customer ratepayers wouldn't want to pay for it either. It's a costly undertaking. When the city does do a project, we've, like by the hospital and a number of other places, we put all that stuff underground when the city's done projects, so we continue to evaluate those as city announces new projects as well.
Okay, when you do those, is there a minimum length of that you would like to do, or like you
Generally-
don't want to come in and do one block, do you? You want to come in
No,
and
we
do
typically try to do a whole subdivision unless it's higher voltage. Typically, we won't put anything above 13 kV, which is our distribution underground. All the 46 stuff will stay above ground. It's just too cost prohibitive. That's voltage-wise to bury the really high voltage cable. But the primary we will continue to put underground, both single phase and three phase as it warrants, and the ratepayers can afford it. So.
Great, thanks. That was, just have one more question. I own a home in Plover, and we get our bill every 3 months, and our water bill, I've compared it side by side. The cost of water there is less than half of what it is here in Wisconsin Rapids. Can you speak to that?
a lot of the costs, and if you look in Wood and Portage counties, those costs can vary, where Plover is probably one of the lower ones, lower communities in those two areas. And it just varies on what the treatment costs are, when they last went in for a rate case, what maintenance pieces need to be done. I think Plover, if it's a newer system than Wisconsin Rapids, they might have less maintenance going on than Wisconsin Rapids has for maintenance costs. We have high treatment costs because we have high iron in our water, where I don't think that's the same in Plover. But our goal at the utility is to be in the median of all the utilities in Wood and Portage County, and we've maintained that goal for many years. Thank you.
I'm going to make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve Water and Lights budget. All right.
Well, I was gonna make a quick question. Have we been making motions to approve individual budgets? Do we need to do that, or?
No, you'll actually approve the whole budget at the regularly scheduled council meeting. That's when you'll vote and approve all the budgets at once, subject to any changes that are made by motion. The water and light is we take separate action on the water and light budget.
Okay, sounds good. I'm in favor. Aye.
Yep. It's checks number 9972 to 100098.
Motion to approve check 9972 to 10098.
But we have a meeting on Thursday, as you got noticed, and then next week on the 11th, we have the public hearing on the budget. So other than our regularly scheduled first Tuesday of the month, which is December, it's up to you if you want any additional budget meetings outside of the one on Thursday and the one next Thursday before it goes to the council for final approval.
Thank you, Chairman. So with this item, we worked with J.R. Seward with Coldwell Banker in regards to hiring a commercial broker to list the Eagles Club building. And J.R. put together a very lengthy marketing proposal here. I've handed out one page of that marketing proposal, which identifies a recommended listing price and potential sale price based on a number of factors, including comparable sales recently. And then the other thing that was included in part of the packet was the actual listing contract. So you should have seen that already as part of the, again, the finance packet. The two differences in regards to the previous approval regarding the Eagles Club are the listing price as well as the term. So again, in working with JR, who's here today and can answer any additional questions, if you can remember, you moved to approve a sale of, I believe, $87,500, which was a number that our assessor placed as fair market on the property. And again, the difference being that JR has identified a much smaller estimated fair market value. And then the contract that's been provided identifies a 12-month listing contract. I think the motion that was made previously was a minimum of 3. So I would support this. I know Jennifer, the city clerk, formerly in real estate, also has reviewed this and says it looks good and would support it, as well as the city attorney. And so I think we'd be looking for a motion to, again, approve that recommended listing price and then the 12-month commercial listing contract with the understanding that if we receive any proposals, we would bring them before this body for review as they come in. Thank you.
Well, this sure didn't go as planned. We had someone in here that was willing to pay with the assessed value for the property. So why would we approve a contract where we're going to list it for almost half that? It's pretty crazy, and I'm obviously not in favor of that. We might as well call those people back and have them purchase the property. And the idea was for 3 months to give others in the community a chance to match what they were willing to pay, not to drop the price half and give 4 times the length of time. So, I mean, at this point, I'm not in favor of it. I think we should call back the original people interested, if they'll even pay what that now with this being public.
Kyle, did that other party make an offer?
So they did not officially make an offer. The only thing they submitted was an official interest in the property, but they did not identify a price or any other terms other than what their intent was to use the property for. But no, previously we never discussed price in closed session or in open session. None was ever provided.
Thank you.
Again, to clarify, it was originally an interested party that came to us identifying a use, and then we brought that use before this body, as well as the overall intent as to whether or not we wanted to keep the building, list the building, demolish the building, and then it was determined that we would choose to list it, and so we pursued a commercial realtor. And now we have a listing contract in front of you for approval.
Tom, if I may. So while we're working with the realtor, and I'll call you, you can come up as soon as I'm done. I guess I just don't understand why we would agree to, even though their suggestion is stated here and the data of why they do that, why we would even think about listing the property to that amount. I do know that, or I remember that the party that was in here was aware of the assessed value, and they were still interested. At this, you can give me time.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I certainly can understand why, if you look at what the assessor has said, why you'd be like, well, where is this coming from? I would encourage the council members and anybody else that's on the committee to go into the property. The property is borderline tear down when you go on the inside. It is inhabited by multiple different types of rodents that have made nests. There's evidence of water damage or some type of damage, especially in the lower level. Probably has asbestos tile. And the inside is going to have to be gutted. The exterior is actually in pretty good shape. That was, I think, one of the pluses that this property has going for it. I had been in this property several years ago when the Eagles Club had contacted me about possibly selling it, and I was shocked at the deteriorated condition. I couldn't even get pictures in there because there was no electricity to actually get enough light to take some good pictures. But I would say if this does get postponed or there's going to be further discussion, I would encourage somebody to go in there. if not physically, but to take a look at it yourselves, but to go in and take pictures of it. It's in a condition that most buyers probably aren't going to be willing to take on that. And so the price reflects that. A property just around the corner from that on Oak Street, over by Paul Gross Jewelers, just to give you a reference point, was on the market for $49,000, sold for $43,500. It's in the analysis that I prepared, and it was in move-in condition. And that's why there's such a significant difference in terms of the anticipated sale price versus the asking price. I think maybe you can go to 40 for an asking price, but I would tell you ahead of time, if you get an offer for $25,000 or above, certainly $30,000 or above, you ought to give it serious consideration, again, because of the condition and what it's going to take to bring it back. There's also some functional obsolescence involved. This property includes 2 buildings that have an adjacent wall in between them, and they share that wall. If you look at the building from the front, the Eagles Club, the former Eagles Club, is raised out of the ground about probably 5 feet, and the former Normington's, which is right next door, is on a concrete slab and is at grade. So now when you go into that building, when the Eagles Club purchased it, they took and they put in this like huge ADA type of ramp, which takes up probably 40% of the space that's in what used to be the Normingtons. So a lot of functional obsolescence there too. And as soon as somebody starts to do a major remodel, and Kyle's got the information on this, you have to bring everything up to code. And that's going to be a challenge also. So I get it that the city paid $80-some thousand for this when they decided it was part of redevelopment area. And so it's kind of like, oh my gosh, why would we sell it for half that? You'll be lucky to sell it for half that. So that's the background on it. And if you go there and look at it, you'll see exactly what I mean. I mean, if the city decides the parking's more important, then take down the buildings, and have the parking.
I guess I don't see the harm in putting this out there with a realtor for a year. If the interested party that approached us before is still interested, there's no reason that they can't go through the realtor for this. So I think I support this. Jake?
I mean, we're going to pay a 10% commission, which is fine. It is disappointing, though, that they were interested at the assessed value, and now we're half that. But we're there now, so I agree with Jay in that at this point, we might as well look at a realtor. And thank you, JR, for the information.
You bet.
One of the reasons for the motion was to take this off community development's plate so that you can show the property and work with a client directly and complete the sale for the city. So I think that purpose still holds. So I'll second what Jay said, and Kyle, you can reach out to the interested party and they'll know that we then have it listed and they can work with JR.
In most cases, they'd be considered an exclusion from this, I believe. But if we choose not to, I guess I'd look to JR to comment as to whether or not that's the case. I will say, since we've discussed this, there has been another interested party that I've showed the facility to, and because we're not under contract at this point with Coldwell, so we ultimately have 2 individuals. The second one that I most recently showed it to, though, has now lost interest after touring it. But hence the reason to get Coldwell under contract, so that we don't have these exemptions from, the listing contract.
Sure, so we hold the exemption, complete the contract, and then you guys take it from there?
So let's talk about that for a moment. Were you going to say something, Matt? No?
I'm just curious if, I don't know if you know or not, but what was the purpose in buying it in the beginning?
I think the purpose to buy it was to ensure that another tavern was not operating within the facility, and to prevent, right, that, that type of use, and the associated ancillary uses that go along with it in terms of, the police visits, kind of the degradation in the neighborhood. So I think it was primarily just to have control of that. I think from a planning standpoint, as I alluded to in the presentation I gave in September, it also has potential to expand parking and to, accommodate other uses within the downtown in the event that it was demolished. So I think that might have been part of the original intent, but again, it's hard for me to answer because I was not here when it was originally purchased in 2017, nor was the administration that I think primarily championed for its purchase.
There wasn't a passed on, like, overall plan, like, this was why we'd have to go back and ask those folks as to what they were thinking at the time, or if, in the end, it's just kind of null and void at this point?
There's nothing formal that I've come across,
Yeah.
A plan of action, so to speak, or an implementation plan for the property.
I think, Kyle, is probably what you had mentioned, parking and anything to, or the use of what there was. So I think it was just, it's a space there that, what to use it, what could the use be for? It's,
Tom?
Jake?
Yeah, and again, this isn't on Kyle because he wasn't here, but I mean, the thought of, okay, we don't want another tavern in there. This is literally across the alley from the street that is lined with taverns. And I don't think we want to say we want to push our taverns out of downtown. And not to rehash the entire discussion from the night this motion was made, but we do not need to be tearing down any more buildings downtown. We have a river block sitting there empty, been empty for years. I guess if we needed parking, we could go there. But I don't think we need to make any more parking downtown, or we're not going to have it downtown to even go and park in. But JR, I believe you're going to speak to what your plans would be after this property is possibly listed with you.
I'd like to speak to the question regarding the exception or exceptions to the contract. If we're going to enter into this agreement, and I can understand that there was a prior interest, and I'm willing to recognize that, but it would need to be for a period of time, because we can't put money and time into marketing the property, and then this buyer 3-4 months down the road comes swooping in, and we've invested time and money and not get compensated for it. I am in business, and that's just not a good, business decision. So I would ask that the exception, because it's not a cut and dry thing, it's a negotiated, agreement, that we put maybe a 2-week to 30-day at the max period on that exception. Not that they have to actually make an offer and close on it in 30 days, but make an offer, and that way we can back off if it's something that the city is going to be accepting, if this party is actually interested. I would also offer a hybrid to that and be willing to reduce our fee for that particular buyer if they act on it within that time period, so that you would get the benefit of my professional services in negotiating that transaction and representing the city to hopefully bring about a successful sale.
Jake?
So Kyle, I guess the question is, and maybe for you, JR, wouldn't this first interested party, wouldn't they go through the realtor now? I mean, isn't that how we would set this up?
So with regards to the previous action that was made, we chose not to entertain any further conversation or discussion until 3 months had passed to see if other interested parties came forth. And so that was relayed to this interested party that we were going to be listing it. And then we were, again, the motion was made for 90 days, 3 months, and then we would reconnect with that interested party thereafter. If things are changing now with regards to the timeline, the sales contract of 12 months, the price, we can do it, we can keep them as an exclusion and adhere to a 30-day or that 3-month period, or we don't necessarily have to. We can bypass the exclusion and they can be, a buyer like anyone else that would come forth interested in the property. I think, again, in pursuing the professional services, I'd hate to entertain or ultimately go with this buyer and JR still doing the work, the MLS listing and everything else that comes with it, and then there's nothing to show for it essentially for his professional services. Henceforth, the reason why we came up with the initial approval that was discussed in September to just offer a $5,000 commission or $4,000 commission essentially to any realtor that brought a buyer to the property, so that we're not necessarily entering into a contract with a realtor. And I think that wasn't well received with the committee, and so we did not pursue that as an option. And this is in front of you instead, having an actual listing contract. So very lengthy answer to your question, but hopefully that provides some history there.
Yep, Jake.
In all fairness, I think the interested buyer stays an inclusion. Kyle's already invested a good amount of time into showing them, and I don't think that it makes sense for them to be an inclusion. I mean, they're here before the contract, they're interested. Otherwise, that's our main interested buyer right now. We could just contact them and work with them, or we could find another realtor that would let them be an exclusion. So I think we let them stay as is. If you're still interested in the contract, I can see going forward for the reasons that were stated earlier, but I think the current interested parties stay in inclusion. I'll make a motion. So with that, I'll make a motion. Are you still interested in having the contract? Well, I'd make a motion that we move forward with the contract with Coldwell Banker with the inclusion for a previous interested buyer as discussed. No, I think we keep that a year. I'm fine with that. The interested buyer would stay, that contract would stay for the year, that they would be an exclusion, right?
So, to clarify, right, recommending approving the sale price between 35 and 40,000 or the listing price. Obviously, offers come before you for approval. So listing it between 35 to 40,000, approving the contract that's before you, the listing contract, 12 months with Coldwell, and then excluding the interested party or including them as part of the listing contract that would go through Coldwell. Excluding them.
Excluding them, I'm fine with the 12 months, even though we wanted it to be 3. But excluding them, moving forward, I mean, I feel like we're making a lot of unfortunate concessions regarding this already, and that we find out market analysis brings us down half the value. The party that was interested was fine with the assessed value. So I can't see now saying that we'll also pay a commission on the lower value that we already had them interested in. So I think that's fair, that we grant the 12 months, we list for the lower price, but we exclude the previous interested party. And that would be the motion
Excluding them
from the
for
contract.
12 months
For 12,
for the entire listing
correct.
contract. Okay.
I guess I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about that.
I was waiting to hear if there was a second.
I'm waiting to hear to see what you got.
Okay. So, again, I would just ask that you consider this. I understand why you would want to have a representative from the city, Kyle, city attorney, whatever, go ahead and follow up with this particular buyer, especially now knowing what the more realistic fair market value of the property is. I get that. I would ask if they're going to be an out-and-out exception, that they make a decision within 30 days of whether or not they're going to make an offer, and not just be hanging out there for 6 months, and we bring a buyer to the table, and somebody gives them a call, there's a buyer at the table, are you still interested? And now we've helped facilitate, bring about the sale of this property, and we are not going to be paid. I just, from the sense of fairness, do you think that that's fair and equitable? I mean, when the city hires a contractor or hires a consultant to help make a good business decision, is that how you handle compensating them? That's where I'm at. I'm not saying absolutely not, but I would ask from the sense of fairness that you consider that. 30 days is certainly plenty of time to somebody make up their mind whether or not they're even going to make an offer. And that offer may have contingencies. It could be subject to financing. It could be subject to rezoning. It could be subject to a lot of things. But we want to know where we stand if that buyer is going to do something. And I think that that's fair and reasonable.
During the last meeting, you guys had talked about benchmarks that you guys were gonna impose upon the buyer of this facility. Is that something that JR is aware of? And because you don't want to sell this and just let it be a eyesore downtown.
Kyle?
So I think by benchmarks, we had discussed that depending on the use, depending on the value that the interested party may be sticking into the building, and what value would result after the improvements were being made, that may affect an offer, right? And so we've kind of discussed that with JR. I think if we got to that point where we had an offer on the table and somebody were to say, hey, I'm going to stick $100,000 into this facility, here's the use, retail or restaurant, and here's the ending assessed value, and right, we can extrapolate that over the course of 20 years and garner new increased tax revenue. We're maybe more inclined to accept a lower offer. However, it's not maybe, depending on how low it is from a commission-based standpoint, it may not reflect accurately the work that JR is putting into it. I think we've somewhat discussed that. I think at that point, as part of the offer, I think maybe recognizing that and adjusting for it, again, depending on the offer, and adjusting the compensation given to the professional hired to list the property, I think would be appropriate. What that compensation is, I don't know, but I think, right, if we wanted to let it go for $1,000 or $1, right, a nickel across the table in commission on a $1 sale, I don't think accurately reflects the efforts that JR would be putting into this. So I think that discussion would need to be had when we are reviewing offers moving forward.
Well, we didn't have a second to your motion there, Jake. Unless Jay's,
I guess here's my thing. If, I know this is the listing price. Kyle said you had another interested party. That's not to say that, I heard what you said about the condition of the building, but that's not to say that there could be more interest and the price could go up. I'd be willing to try, and I don't think anybody expects you to do this for nothing. I expect you to be paid for this. I can't support your motion. I don't, I'm not.
if you have one.
Well, first, just to ask Kyle, have we talked with any other realtors? No one else would be interested in taking it under the conditions that I laid out before, or?
So again, when the original motion was made, I wasn't instructed to pursue like an RFP. I think it was at my discretion, and I have a very good working relationship with JR. I think he's a great realtor. He does his due diligence, and so from a commercial realtor standpoint, I think he would suit the need and do well. And so that's why I chose to reach out to JR, and he is the only one that I've reached out to list it at this point.
Sure. Well, I don't want to get hung up on money. I mean, we want the property sold, we want it active. But as discussed before, there was some prerequisites per se that we wanted them to hit throughout a period of time. Are you, if in the motion it's directed that you work those out with JR, is that something we could complete, make the motion, it's approved tonight, and then the contract goes into place and it's listed? Or do we have to lay out those terms?
Well, I think that's the intent. I think, right, we're in agreement to the 12-month listing and the lower sale price. I think the hang-up now is the exclusion, and I think I would generally support the 30 days. I think that's fair, that if they're very serious about it, they would have 30 days to make an offer as being excluded from the listing contract. And if they do not, and 3 months go by, then JR would handle that same interested party, and they would have to work through Coldwell.
All right. I mean, it's unfortunate we are where we are, but we're here, so I'll make a motion that we, let me look at the agenda. We approve the commercial listing contract for the vacant city-owned building located at 161 and 163 3rd Street North with J.R. Stewart Coldwell Banker for a 12-month term with an inclusion that a previous interested party be able to make an offer within 30 days of the listing.
And just to, clarify, for the purpose of the motion from the actual legal term of it, it would be that that party would be in exclusion, right?
Exclusion.
Yep, in exclusion, for that 30 days, and that they would not be working through us, they would work directly with the city if they were to make an offer. Was that your intent, Jake?
Right, and them making an offer within 30 days, they
Yep.
have a longer period to close on that,
Of
correct?
course,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yep, that's the intent.
Okay.
I'm assuming the 30 days would be effective on approval, if it gets approved at the November council. Clarify.
So the actual listing agreement wouldn't go into effect until this goes through the council. When I sent the contracts to Kyle, which I think he might have already shared with the city attorney, we left the beginning date open because we knew there was a process. So it would be from whatever the inception of the listing would be.
Right, yeah, it's not fully approved until common council. But yeah, those would be the terms. Outside of all this discussion, I really look forward to JR entertaining buyers to get this building active again. I'm a big proponent of not tearing down any more buildings downtown and moving businesses into these. I hope that's where we end up, or we're gonna end up without a downtown pretty soon.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and second. Anybody have any comments, anything, otherwise committee will vote on that with the 30-day exclusion. Committee, all in favor, respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. That's it, JR.
Thank you for accepting the proposal. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Number 7, consider the sale of vacant city-owned land located at an unaddressed parcel south of Alton Street between 12th Avenue South and 11th Avenue South, parcel ID 3402809. In open session, the committee may vote to go into closed session under section 19.85, parent 1, parent E of the Wisconsin statutes, which reads, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. In closed session, the committee may discuss negotiations and strategy regarding the sale of the above property. The committee may adjourn in closed session or may return to open session. In returning to open session, the committee may continue to consider the sale of vacant land referenced above and may take action thereon. Committee, what would be your wishes? Or Kyle, do you have any? Yeah. Made motion? Motion go in closed session? Motion and sec? I guess I had by voice vote here. Jake, Tom, aye. With that, we'll go in closed session, everybody. Okay, we're back in open session here. Go ahead, the floor is yours. Introduce yourselves and oh, hit the button there. The green light should come on.
Okay.
There.
You have the paperwork in front of you, I believe, and you can see the situation with the land between Aaron and G on Alton and our side of our warehouse going out to 12th Avenue.
12th and 11th, between 12th and 11th there. The large parking lot or driveway area. It's something that we've maintained since we've owned the blue building there, or the white topped building.
This one's ours, isn't it?
This
Yeah.
is us.
Mhm, this is, yeah.
And we've maintained it and everything else, and it's been vacant forever, and we just,
I think it would just be detrimental to our business and to our warehouse and to everything that we do there if it would be owned by us, and then we
Yeah.
could continue to take care of it and maintain it.
bring in the gravel, snow, plowing, everything for the last, I don't even know how many years.
Long time.
Long time. And it's something that I was talking with
Paul Vollert.
Paul Vollert about, and he's like, yeah, it's nothing to the city. I mean, not nothing, but, they don't have any plans for it or anything. And we just, again, wanted to make sure it stayed usable for us, Aaron and G. Chemical company has used it a couple of times for some of their remodel projects and stuff like that, add-on projects. And it would be open for all that yet. And as we stated in the letter, I believe, plan on writing something up for Aaron and G for their total access at any given time. So that's pretty much it. Don't have any other plans for the property.
I just want to comment, reviewing the letter again, it didn't mention utility easements, so there are utilities. There's actually city water that runs under the parcel, if you look on the map up here. And I think you guys knew that. So I think, you know, the easement should be for the access for Aaron and G, and then the water mains and laterals as
Oh,
well.
absolutely,
Oh.
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah. It
Just
caused
make-
a very large sinkhole a few years back.
Yeah.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you. If there's nothing else, committee, what would you like to do?
I'll make a motion to approve the sale of the city-owned land located at parcel ID 3402809 between 12th Avenue South and 11th Avenue South. The offer states that they would enlist legal services to draft a perpetual easement. I'd ask that they also, in that draft, include easement for the water main line.
I'll second that. Did that include everything, I guess, Kyle, what that was,
Yeah, you'll want to mention the sale price in the motion.
oh, sale price.
For a sale price of $11,500.
If there's no other questions, committee, we'll vote. All in favor, respond by aye. Aye. Opposed, ayes have it, so that's it. Goes to our council.
Thank you very much.
This will,
Goes to the council next, or whatever, when do we meet? With that, committee, we're to item number 8, and that's entertaining a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, we got motion second to adjourn. All in favor, respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. We're adjourned at 5:38.